Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuy podcast.
Like scary movies? What's your favorite scary movie?
Here's Johnny.
We'll tear your soul apart.
The boogeyman is real, and you found him.
Game over, man. Game over.
What do you want?
I want to hear you scream.
Oh yeah, this one feels a lot better. More like comfortable in my skin over here, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, I'm the SaWGuy. I have a damn good episode for y'all today. Going to be talking about my childhood, hopefully your childhood, if you remember this good shit. But anyways, I'm going to be talking about, that's right there, Goosebumps. If y'all don't know what this was, man, you missed out on some good shit back in the 90s. Besides the books, what I'm going to talk about is also, dun dun dun, the movies. I don't know if you all remember the movies, the TV shows. Well, they were miniseries. They really were. Yeah, The Haunted Mask, The Haunted Mask 2 were the two popular ones. I have a bunch of other ones, but I don't want to, put them all out there and be like, oh, I got this one, this one. No, we all know which ones they were. But anyways, welcome to the third episode of the SaWGuy podcast. Man, dude, I just thinking about all this shit brings back all my childhood. I was just, So, for those of you that don't remember, either the older generation or the newer generation, y'all probably seen the remake or the new movie with Jack Black, Goosebumps. And for what it was, that was a cool movie. I'm not going to talk about that. It wasn't my cup of tea. I wish they would have did a different route with it. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to talk about everything about Goosebumps. So, obviously, the podcast is not that long. So, I'm going to try to make it short and sweet for you all to see if you remember things. But anyways, if you don't remember Goosebumps, what it was a bunch of these short stories put into chapter books, right? This all started in, I want to say 1992, 93 with the first one. And they got big back in the day in the 90s because of good old Stephen King, Stephen King stories, they were surreal. A lot of people liked them, but Stephen King was too adult-oriented for kids. So what they did is that this author, I don't even know what the RL stands for, to be honest with you, but I know his name was R.L. Stine, right? He wrote some short stories, and eventually it led him to write Goosebumps. Well, he wrote Goosebumps, and it just became a hit, because a lot of it was very surreal, like Stephen King, but at the same time, what made R.L. Stine's books and Goosebumps special is the fact, even though they were so surreal, they were friendly enough for kids. At least back in the 90s, When you think back in the 90s, people didn't really care so much. Everybody wasn't offended by every little thing, this story's too scary, blah, 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 let's cut it out. It wasn't like that back in the 90s. It was fair game. So, a lot of these stories, I'll never forget, I think the first one was Say Cheese and Die. That was a good one. And just the cover art alone. I mean, look at this. Who, as a kid in the 90s, if you're my age, right? If you saw this book cover, you'd be like, that's some good shit right there, right? The art alone just dragged you in. And then you look at the back. Look at the back on that, right there, For those of you that are listening to the audio podcast, I know you can't hear it, you can't see it. But I'm holding up a copy of Night of the Living Dummy 2. I'll post that picture up here in the video, just in case you wanted to see. But that picture alone was just like, the art was just like, holy shit. That always attracted me, was just the picture. But I remember it was such a craze on it because of the fact of, not only did the art hook you as a kid, but parents didn't care neither, because they're like, oh yeah, it's getting kids to read, which was cool, back in the day in the 90s, but Goosebumps were a thing, man. It's just, it blew up, it was a craze, and you had to be there to kind of understand that craze, because that craze was just like, holy shit, But anyways, it started, I want to say 92, 93 is when the first book, his original stories had came out, but they didn't put them into actual books yet. But when, I think Say Cheese and Die was the first one, that came out between 93 and 94, and then it blew up. No, actually no, earlier than that. I want to say the end of 92. because I was alive at this time, you know, I remember that. But he wrote 62 original stories. You could still get the original ones, but I think now what they did is that they reboot them, different covers, things like that. But if you look on eBay or whatever, you can still find them if you want to collect them or whatever. But anyways, it was so popular that by 1995, 95, they started converting it into TV shows and movies. Well, the first one was The Haunted Mask. Everybody knows this because they made a big deal about it for kids and everything. Watch The Haunted Mask, watch The Haunted Mask. And they had 2 parts to it because it's an hour movie. It's considered a movie, but anyways, they had 2 parts to it. But for some reason, at least in my area, they showed both of them at the same time. Depending on where you were, maybe they did one episode one week, the next episode the next. But it was still pretty cool. I mean, the way they translate the story and the art into it was just like phenomenal. But back to what I was saying, you know, what was the craze about? What was everybody crazy about Goosebumps? You know why Goosebumps was crazy? Because it introduced a lot of these kids who grew up in the 90s, their first take on horror and horror movies and horror stories and stuff like that. Because, let's see, I got some other ones here. This book right here, because he had more scary stories to tell in the dark, which we all know, or at least I would know, or my generation. But you had these stories, and then you had the rip-offs like these and other ones, and they were pretty cool, you know? They weren't as dark as More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but they did basically the job, you know? They had some good stories, and it was very intriguing. It got a lot of kids into it. It got a lot of young adults, young adolescent teens, the tweeners, you know, back in the day is what they used to call it. But they got everybody into it, and that was the first take on horror. And it all started because, like I said in the previous episode, because of Stephen King. You know, Stephen King, he really put the mark on it with it. If he didn't do what he did, make those stories so out there, so surreal, you know what I mean? It wouldn't have came out as good as it was to bring in R.L. Stine and get that idea to build Goosebumps. But anyways, that was a whole craze with it. Actually, you're going to laugh. It wasn't Say Cheese and Die. I wrote it down in my notes. Welcome to the Dead House. And it was actually released in 1992. The end of 92. So see, I remember. There was some good stuff to it. But like I said too, with every story, it was so surreal. Like say for instance, man, shit. There was a lot of stories. I mean, he had one of a killer sponge that would come alive. He had one with calling all creeps, where people were creeps and everything like that, and you eat a cookie, you turn into a creep, shit like that. Night of the Living Dummy, I know it's a play on Night of, Night of the Living Dead, things like that, so. But, I mean, that one was pretty cool. It was kind of a Chucky ripoff, or at least from the story. But all of his stories were so surreal, in a sense where, like, they would go back in time, or something would happen, you know, but it never talked about death. They would say, oh, they were never born, but they didn't die, you know? They had little twists like that, or, oh, you know, you got transported back into the past, you know, or, oh, your dad was taken over by a plant monster, stay out of the basement. And all those stories, and it was actually really cool how they did all that, you know, because they kept it intriguing, they kept it going, they kept it kid-friendly, you know, and that's how it was back in the day. And there's so many freaking stories. And when I was growing up, and I never got out of it, but through the years when it got to like book number, like the late 50s, they started to kind of get watered down. So they did a bunch of spin-offs like the Choose Your Own Adventure. So basically you would open the book, you would read it, and then it would tell you, oh, do you want to go through this pathway or do you want to go through this door? And it tells you which page to go turn to. And sometimes you would die, and sometimes you would go down that path and you see a werewolf or something, you know? That's when his books got into, like, really watered down and shit like that. But, you know, his original stories were always good. There were so many of them. And when you talk about Goosebumps, I'm bringing up all my damn childhood right now, you know? I probably brought up a lot of your childhoods too, you know, because who doesn't remember Goosebumps? When that blew up so big, I remember the book fair. That was like their main thing. They would have this whole Goosebumps section set, right? Or display. And basically, they did anything and everything they can to get kids to read books. They had a mascot named Curly. For those of you guys listening to the audio part, I don't know if you remember Curly, but I'll post up a picture of that. I'll post up a picture on here too, so that way you'll see it. Probably at the end of the video or not. But Curly, he was the mascot, kind of like how Eddie was for. It's just thinking of Goosebumps. It was. He's basically a mascot. Just bear with me on this one. He was a mascot. So basically, if you saw a skeleton with glasses and a purple mohawk, you would know that was Curly from Goosebumps, telling you, and he would talk like the Crypt Keeper, talking about read books and books are scared, ghoulishly good, random shit like that. But that's how it was. It really was. And he was used in basically everything as far as advertisement goes for Goosebumps. So if you saw like bookmarks, book promotions, anything that had to do with Goosebumps, you always saw it. I know these books, I got a bunch of them, the old style before he came on. But if you see some of the newer ones, if you look up on eBay or Amazon and see like the newer design books, you'll see his different character designs on there. But he's basically their mascot. He was in on everything. And I think, I know you'll probably all laugh, but I remember I still have my stuff from when I had a Goosebump birthday party. Yeah, they had a Goosebump birthday party supply stuff. Go figure, right? It was the big thing. But anyways, instead of it showing like the Goosebump logo, they basically showed Curly. That was his name, the skeleton, Curly. And it was basically saying reading is ghoulishly fun or something crazy like that, But that's how it was. It really was. And Goosebump was this phenomenon. And then just by overnight, probably by 1999 is when it kind of faded off a little bit. It faded off a lot, but people still always remembered, and everyone always went back to reading the originals. But you can only do so much with the originals without being like a dead horse, you know what I mean? But all the stories were really good. If you have never heard of Goosebumps, I hopefully this would intrigue you about it, because I only have a few of these, but behind my camera over here, I have stacks and stacks of fucking Goosebump books. But anyways, they were all pretty good books. It was interesting because that's what got kids to read. That's what got me to read, honestly. And every story was so different. You wanted to get hooked on the next one and the next one and the next one. But, it's just another thing too, like I said, is always the cover art. I know I keep going back to it, but this is my favorite cover art right here. The Haunted Mask 2. I don't know if you can see that, right? The cover for The Haunted Mask 2 was always my favorite, just because the artist, his name was Tim Jacobus, and he had nothing to do with Goosebumps other than making the art. And if you've ever seen any of the original Goosebumps, and you've seen all of the art from the first one, I think even down to the spin-offs, like the Choose Your Own Adventure ones, the random offshoot sequels when he was doing all the other stuff with the books. But anyways, he did all the art for it. And just all the art made it pop. I don't know what he did to make it pop, but it was just, he used bright colors, surreal themes. And it just, to me, it reminded me as a kid what it did for the older generations with Twilight Zone when they see the old pictures of things, or the old promotions. Because that's basically what the kind of art it was. It really was. But he's still around. He was, Tim Jacobus, he was about in his 30s, I think, when he started doing like the art for all of Goosebumps. But he's still around. If you ever get a chance to, look him up on Google, Tim Jacobus, and all of his art will pop up, because he did other stuff too that it looks like Goosebumps, but it isn't Goosebumps. Does that make sense? Like, he did art that was outside of it, but it had the same character styles and things like that at Goosebumps. And he's got a lot of good shit. Like, half of my house is all decorated with fucking Goosebump art. That's just me. As you can tell, with all my buddies behind me. So, yeah. But, what I thought was interesting too, I was looking through all my notes and writing down notes. Every episode I do, I always research, do what I got to do to make this podcast good, So anyways, what I did is that I went through and looked up information on these Goosebumps books. I found out that basically, besides them being released just in America and being big in America, it was big in all these other countries too. Like, it wasn't just American kids reading Goosebumps. You had Goosebumps in Europe. You had Goosebumps as far as, shit, Malaysia. I remember my cousin telling me something about it. And R.L. Stine sold approximately 350 million of these books, just all together. Now, I don't know if they rounded that up. I don't know if that's the exact number. Don't quote me on that. But they say it's 350 million. I know it's a shit ton that he sold, but I don't know if it's in 350 million. I think it's maybe more or less, you know. But he had it released in 32 different languages, which blew my fucking mind. Like, how can you... Like, I want to be able to find one day in another country, Night of the Living Dummy, the book, and see if I can find it in some kind of other different language. Because that'd be interesting to see, you know, how they differentiate before... Well, how do you say it? Because, you know, when they translate from English into another different language, it's always a little different. Maybe they mix up the stories, you know. It's always been interesting. Maybe they do that. I don't know. If you have a Goosebump book in a different language and you know something different about it, you know, comment, tell me, message me, let me know. Show a picture of it if you have it, because that'd be interesting to me to see. That would blow my fucking mind about that, you know. But, I mean, honestly, like, everything with Goosebumps, it all started just because of the books. Now, I know I've been rambling on about the books and R.L. Stine and who he was. He basically was just a normal, basic book author who, kind of like Stephen King in a way. He liked horror movies, he liked horror stories. But what I thought was kind of cool is that he marketed these to kids in a way where kids would get hooked, they're friendly, parents would actually allow them to read it. Because I don't know, everybody I grew up with, I don't know one person that never said, oh yeah, my parents never let me read Goosebumps because it was too scary. Really? I mean, everybody in my age bracket at least, I don't know personally about you guys, but if you had some stories, some funny, crazy things about Goosebumps, let me know, comment, message, you know, let me I'd be interested to hear about it, you know, because it's all interesting to me about it. Now, case in point, let me get into the TV shows. So, what happened in 1995, I think he was already in the 30s, halfway done with the original series. He had 30 books in, and then that's when Fox, at the time, they had this thing called Fox Kids Club, right? It was, you get out of school, and they were after school cartoons or whatever. But anyways, they premiered the Goosebumps show. And the Goosebumps show had its own theme, had its own opening intro, and basically they meant to do it as a one and done thing. And the first one they ever did was a Haunted Mask, which is why I have that on there, which is why I showed it. And Haunted Mask, for what it was, I mean, you can look it up on YouTube. I've seen people post actual full videos of it, so you can see the whole episode. But it's not very long for what it was. I mean, I think it's like 45 minutes. Most of it's tied up with commercials. We all know about that with Walking Dead and all the other good TV shows they do right now. But anyways, when they did the episode, it was a hit. Like, nobody expected it to be something super big, because it was... If you watch it now, you know they did it on a budget. Okay, we get it. They did it on a budget, but for what it was just... The effects were right on the money. Everything about the art, the creativity, the look, all of that stuff, all matched the story and the imagination of what was going on. Like the Haunted Mask. Let me get my mask. This right here, they got that matching down to the wire on how it looked. I don't know if I'm putting it right there. Yeah, right there. I mean, there's no comparison, right? See? Boom. Boom. For those of you guys listening to the audio, I'll post a picture of it, so that way you all see what I'm talking about. Because I know you guys are probably thinking like, okay, why are you showing us this shit? We can't see it. Right? I know. But anyways, what was cool about the series, they would pick out the best stories and put it in. So obviously, if you had to pick a episode to do out of the whole series at the time when they had 30 books, you had to do Haunted Mask as your number one. automatically. Eventually, later on, they did do Night of the Living Dummy. And then I think they did Night of the Living Dummy 1. Then they did Part 3. Part 3 was the one where they had all the other dummies and everything. It was kind of cool how they did that concept. They had the Haunted Mask 2 came on later on. It was probably like after a year or two of the show. They had the piano playing one. Forgot the name of that episode. Welcome to Horrorland. They had a bunch of other different ones. Calling All Creeps. But what was crazy is that for the good episodes or the good stories, they made those like hour long, 45 minutes. Like the Haunted Mask 2. Those are the main ones. All the other ones that were kind of oddball, they stuck with 30-minute ones. And then eventually they changed it from like after school program to Saturday morning. No, they did Saturday night. Then they did Saturday morning for them. And what was cool about that is that the ratings were through the roof with it. So they kept making them. So I think they have at least close to 25, almost 30 episodes, if I'm not mistaken, all together. And that's including the hour-long episodes and all that and everything. But it was pretty cool how they did it because they basically built an empire of Goosebumps. It was this whole new thing, and it was really cool. If you lived in that time, comment, let me know what you think about it. I'm really interested to hear what everyone has to say, because I'm excited as fuck still talking about this. I'm like, oh shit, I get to do an episode on Goosebumps. What the hell? But anyways, it was pretty cool, because they did a lot of different unique stories with it. And they ran a lot with it. But towards 1999, there was just that change of things. You know, a lot of people kind of got out of it. I think that was when my generation kind of grew up from teenagers to young adults, around that range, you know. That's where a lot of people, at least I remember it. Don't quote me if I'm wrong, but quote me, you know what I mean. But anyways, they switched it up, and it was, I don't know, it kind of sucked that they switched it up, because for what it was really good, but it's just the downfall in it kind of sucked, and then eventually it fell off the earth in the mid 2000s. I want to say from like 2004 all the way up to about 2010-11, and then there was rumors that they were going to do the movie, which would have been cool if they kept with the movie idea, where they were going to do like kind of like what they did with the TV episodes. They pick one good story and then carry it on, and there was talk that they were going to do it like the Trick or Treat series or Tales of Halloween, where it's basically all the stories being told by one person, and then basically you get like parts and sips of it. You know, so every story would be like cut into 15 minutes to make like a 2-hour movie, which would have been good. But then they threw a curveball, and they basically got Jack Black, which I wouldn't put him on the top of my list, but they put Jack Black to play R.L. Stine, the author, and basically his books come to life and all of his characters come out. Don't get me wrong, it's a cool concept, but execution was... But I know it's garnered for kids. I'm a big kid myself, but, you know, I don't know. But I would have hoped they did it better, but I don't know. There's talk about doing a sequel right now, you know, so it's 2018. They might do a sequel, we'll see. I think it came out 2014, you know, around that time, so maybe. If they do a sequel, we'll see, you know. But anyways, they did that really good as far as bringing the characters to life, you know, the effects and everything. But the big thing, too, with Goosebumps, man, I remember was, besides doing the books and the movies, they had a fuckload of merchandise, you know, and I know everybody who remembers it, y'all know remembers, everybody remembers, because they were owned by Scholastic. Scholastic is a company that obviously promotes stuff for kids, to book reading, anything that has to do with books and education, which is cool, you know. They got kids hooked on reading and educating themselves, you know, so be it. But what they used to do, and I remember this as a kid back when, you know, some of your bigger department stores, they would sell like those books, you know, like back to school folders, you know, 25 cents, notepads, you know, $1, whatever, you know. Well, anyways, they would have pictures of Goosebumps. So they would have like the big hamster on one of them. They had binders, they had folders. I wish, shit, I wish I had all my shit out here to show you, you know, kind of be like, well, yeah, you know, they really did. I remembered a lot of it. I don't know if y'all remembered any of it, but I remember they market the hell out of it. You know, everything from, besides the books, the movies, they also had t-shirts. I remember as a kid, I would have every t-shirt of every story. And then they had the glow-in-the-dark variants and all that stuff. And everything was all cool about it. It really was. But they market the hell out of it back in the day, too. And they did really good on it as far as, because basically they kept interest and things like that of it going. As far as video games go, I know there was talk about them doing a video game. I don't know if they ever did. If they did, please comment on here. Let me know. Message me because I'm kind of interested. But I know they did a video game of it afterwards when the movie came out. Something that tied in with the movie, but I'm talking about like the TV shows and stuff. I want to say they did, but I can't remember or recall if they did. But yeah, I mean, Goosebumps, for what it was, it changed everything. It brought on a lot of different surreal themes. And it came around the same time as Are You Afraid of the Dark? Now that was another good one. That's an episode for later, you know. Not the next one. I don't want to put too close to Goosebumps. But anyways, they brought on a lot of good stuff with some different surreal things. My only regret that they never did for it, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, comment me, say I fucked up or something, but I don't recall them ever doing one on a clown, like a killer clown or a creepy clown. That would have been a damn good story if they did that. I think most of it had to do with creatures, most of it had to do with turning into something, going back into time, dealing with crazy masks and shit. They had everything except a clown. I don't understand that. But then again, I do understand it because back in the 90s, clowns weren't as scary as they are now. You know, you didn't have people dressing up as clowns, running around trying to scare people, talk shit, do whatever. You know what I mean? But it was one of those things where that was my only regret that they never did with Goosebumps. But all the other stories are good. I mean, they did have a crazy dog one. Reminds me of a man's best friend. They did have dolls, creatures, basically anything you could think of. If you shotgun an idea to the wall, basically Goosebumps had a story for it. Everything except clowns, which is interesting. So, I don't know, maybe keep your eyes on that one with clowns, you know? But I think for what it was, for everything that they put up to, everything that R.L. Stine did, to me, I would go as far as saying, as far as horror stories go, he did what Stephen King did. He basically he re-excited the newer generation for horror movies and horror stories, and it kept it going, you know? And now that you got past the 2000s and the 2010s and the decade area and everything like that, there hasn't been really anything interesting as far as like getting kids hooked on it, to get the young adults, the young teenagers into it. I mean, yeah, you got cool movies or whatever, but, you know, nothing like Goosebumps back in the day, man. And the way that they could market things back in the day was just like fucking phenomenal, man. Trading cards, Pogs. Y'all remember Pogs. I had Pogs. If I had Pogs, y'all had Pogs, you know? But they had Pogs. They had books, party supplies, everything with it. But anyways, yeah, that's Goosebumps for you. But final note on this, you know, just if you never heard of Goosebumps, if you remember Goosebumps, and I hope I brought back some nostalgia for y'all, get a chance to look it up on YouTube, see if you can find some of the old episodes and watch them, you know, because there was some good shit back in the day. Maybe it might bring back some old memories for you. It sure as hell brought back memories for me, and I had to go back and read almost like half of the shit that I have here right now. But if not reading up the stories, look up the art too. Tim Jacobus, his art is just fucking phenomenal too, you know. So if you ever get a chance to, like, I know for me, I know he sells, I think he sells print arts or whatever, but what I do is that I usually just like, to me, I like to save the art. I like to look at it. I like to appreciate it. You know, little things like that. But I mean, a lot of, wow. a lot of good stuff with it. You know what I mean? So if at the end of the day, if you get a chance to look up Tim Jacobus, see if you can, find a book or two from the series and read it. Bring back some nostalgia. Check out the movies, the TV shows, because Goosebumps, you can't talk the 90s without bringing up Goosebumps in horror films, or in horror just in general. Because in the 90s, you had Goosebumps. That was a big thing that kept us going, But anyways, I'm glad y'all joined this. I'm glad y'all send me some comments on the other previous episodes. So, some good food for thought, So, hopefully, the next episode, you'll enjoy that one too. Kind of brings into what I was talking about earlier. But anyways, thanks for tuning into the SaWGuy podcast. Hope you enjoy. I'll see y'all next time, alright?